When mixing music, the two most common ways of adding effects to your sounds is by adding them as plugin inserts or by using effect sends, and today I'm going to show you when to use each of these methods in Studio One. Okay, so before we get started, I do want to point out that what I'm going to show you today are basic guidelines, but of course, there are many ways to get the job done, and as long as you're getting the result that you want, the method of how you got there is less important. Second, for this video and demo, I will be using my own production template, and if you want to pick that up for yourself, I'll make sure to link it down below for you. But okay, jumping into the mixer here in Studio One, we can see our channels that correspond to any sounds we might have in our production. Now, in most DAWs, including Studio One, one of the most common ways to add effects to your sounds is by 1, adding that plugin as an insert, or 2, by using what's known as a send. To add a plugin as an insert, all you have to do in Studio One is select the channel for the sound that you want to affect, go to the top to where you see inserts, and then hit the little plus button here. This will bring up a drop-down menu of all your mixing plugins, and here you can even sort them by flat, which just basically puts them in alphabetical order, folder, vendor, and even type. My preferred way of filtering this is by using the vendor tab, but of course you can choose whatever you prefer. In any case, once you're here, search for the plugin that you want to use. So in my case, I'm going to use a decapitator from Soundtoys. Select it, and then it'll be dropped immediately into the insert chain, and the user interface will also pop up. Now, this, I would say, is the way most people use effect plugins, and this method works for a lot of occasions, but there is one more way to do this, and that involves using sends. Now, if you don't understand sends, think of it as a splitter. If we look at any channel in the mixer, the signal starts at the top and then works its way down. So let's take this kick channel, for example. The signal starts at the top and comes down, and the first thing it's going to do is it's going to hit the input controls, which are right here. Quick tip, these are not on by default. You do have to turn them on, and the way to do that is to go to the wrench icon on the top left here, click that, and then under channel components, make sure you have input controls checked. Now, you don't need to have these on, but I find that they're an easy way to not only gain stage your sounds by increasing or decreasing the gain with this little knob here, but they also allow you to affect the polarity of the sound that you're working on. In any case, once a signal passes through the input controls, the next thing it's going to do is hit any insert plugins you might have added. So for me, that would be this decapitator that I added a few moments ago. If we keep following the signal path, the next stop is going to be this little middle section here labeled sends. As mentioned before, the easiest way to think of this is as a splitter, because the moment the signal hits this part of the chain, it's going to be split into 2. Now, the first half will be sent directly to where you have this channel routed to, so in my case, that would be a drums bus, but the second half will be split off at this moment to wherever you have this send pointed to. So to better illustrate, let's actually add a send to this kick, and for this, let's send it off to a room reverb. So then if I play my kick drum using my MIDI controller, I should now get the kick sound with the saturation, the decapitator that I added as an insert, because again, that signal goes through there first. But now I should also hear it with a reverb. Now, the one thing again that we have to remember is that the signal is being split. One copy is being sent directly down to the drums bus, which is going to be right over here, while the other is being split, is being sent to this effects bus, which is where I have my room reverb active as an insert. So then if I play my kick drum, we should be able to verify all of this. We're getting signal here on the actual kick drum channel. We're getting signal on the drum bus, and we're also getting signal on this room reverb effects bus. Now, before we dive into why you might want to use this method or how to set it up, I do want to point your attention back to the actual send on the kick channel right over here. Now, if you notice, the send itself has a slider, and this basically adjusts how much of the signal you want to send. If I slide it to the left, then I send less of the kick, meaning I will hear less reverb. And if I slide it to the right, then I send more signal, and as a result, get more reverb. The other thing to point out here is this little icon to the right of the slider. This is called the pre-fader control, and it controls whether the copy of the signal is sent before it hits the volume fader of that channel or after. So for example, if I leave it off like it is by default, then the copy of the channel signal will be sent after the volume fader. This means that I can adjust the volume for this channel, and that will also affect the overall kick sound, which includes the reverb. Now, the easiest way to think of this is to think of it as an if this, then that statement. If the pre-fader button is off, then send this much of the kick to the effect, but only after you consider the channel's volume fader settings. If you activate the pre-fader feature, then the statement now becomes, if the pre-fader button is on, then send this amount of kick to the effect regardless of whatever the channel's volume fader is set to. There are many ways of using the pre-fader feature, so I encourage you to get creative and explore, but now let's talk about why you might want to do this and how you can set it up. So again, as long as you get your desired result, how you got there doesn't really matter. But for me, one of the big reasons that I use plugins as inserts on my channel itself is when I want it to become one with the sound, meaning that I want it to become something different. There are many examples of this, but one that comes to my mind off the top of my head is adding a tremolo effect to a pad to make it more bouncy. Here, I would add the tremolo effect as an insert because I want to alter that sound to make it sound different. Now, for sends, I find myself using this method whenever I want a group of sounds that are related to have the same effect and sound more cohesive. A great example of this is whenever I want to add a reverb to my drums. Now, of course, you can add a reverb plugin to every single drum channel, but the thing with reverb specifically is that it tends to push things back. If I were to add a reverb plugin to every drum sound, then every single sound will sound like it's in its own space, in its own room, and you might not necessarily want that kind of separation. Instead, what you can do is send those drums to a room reverb like I have done here before with this kick, or better yet, send all of these to a drums bus, and then here you can send them to a room reverb. Doing it this way will make them all sound like they're in the same room, and again, this provides a more unison and more natural sound with the added benefit of also saving you CPU power because you're only using one plugin instead of 8 or whatever it might be. Feel free to mess around and get creative, but at least for me, these are the basic guidelines that I follow for both of these methods. But all right, now let's finally talk about how to set all of this up. Now, we've already discussed how to add inserts. Those are pretty straightforward, but when it comes to sends and Studio One, you can actually send to both a regular bus, like this drums bus here, or to what's known as an effects bus. Now, from what I've been able to discern, the only difference between the two is that a regular bus has also the ability to send to somewhere else, while the effects bus does not. So maybe you want to get really creative and do kind of like a send daisy chain kind of thing, but personally, I prefer to use effects buses for my sends. Now, to create an effects bus in Studio One, it's as simple as right-clicking anywhere in the mixer here, and then selecting Add Effects Channel. Once you're at this spot, you can add whatever plugin you want as an insert, so it doesn't really matter. Here, let me just do a Valhalla room. You can, of course, change the color down here at the bottom, and then you could even route it to wherever you want. So whether that's another bus or to the main outs, it's up to you. Now from here, of course, you can rename it to whatever you want, and I'm just gonna rename it Reverb for now. And then the very last step is, again, just to send signal over like I showed you before. So I'm gonna take my drums bus that I've been using here, click on the plus for the sends, and then send it over to that reverb I just created. But there you have it. That is, in a nutshell, insert effects versus send effects, why you might want to use either of these two, how they work in Studio One, and how you can set them up. Now, if you want to have this exact workflow, but don't want to go through the trouble of setting it up yourself, then feel free to pick up my production template down below in the description, which has all of this ready to go for you. I've made an entire video breaking down that template, and you can watch that right here. But if you're ready to start creating, then click that link down below to pick it up. But that's it for me. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to pick up my production template, which has all of this set up and routed for you. It'll be down below in the description. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Like this video if you like to subscribe if you're not already, but I'll see you on the next one.